Let's welcome tonight's very special guest. He is a WWE Hall of Famer. He is the host of Everybody's Got a podcast, and he's the most hated man from my childhood. The one and only $1 million man, Ted Dibiase. Ted, welcome, sir.
Good to be with you, man. And I appreciate that. And people say this to me all the time. They'll go, "Hey, Mr. DiBiase," he says, please don't want to be offended when I say this, but I hated your guts." And I start laughing. I go, "Thank you." I said, "Because had you liked me, I'd be worried about you." I
Yeah,
was the bad guy for sure.
what a run. What a gimmick. Just
Yeah,
a huge part of my childhood too. I'm 49, so you figure, in 1988, I was in
yeah,
seventh grade, the height of my fandom.
yeah, yeah. I know.
Speaking of that, Ted, I'm going to hit you with a hardball question right off the bat. Something I demand you answer. I need to know, how much did you spend on the plastic surgery on that no good penny pinching crooked referee? I need to know that, Ted. I just text her all
Yeah,
Hefner that
I'm going to tell you what
I just text her all that.
what's crazy is I never knew that Dave Hebner had a twin. I mean, and not till the night of that show where he showed up did I know he had an identical twin. Yeah, but what a way, what a that was Market Square Arena, I believe, wasn't it? Indianapolis.
Yeah, sure was.
Yeah, I was just
30.
in Indianapolis. I just did a Comic-Con there last weekend.
Nice.
So yeah, but that was the setup for WrestleMania IV.
I had Earl on, and he said to me that he got to the building, he went straight to Vince's office. Nobody knew that he was there to referee the match.
Yeah.
What was when you arrived at the building? What was it like for you that night?
Well, for me, it was, I mean, because, and that was, again, the other thing unique about that show, it was live and even more heat. It's the first time that professional wrestling was on live national television in years. Here's a wrestling show in primetime, TV, coast to coast, live, and that hadn't happened for years and years and years and years. So the pressure was on for sure, but I think we pulled it off.
Yeah, you definitely did. What did you know getting to the building? What you were going to do that night?
I didn't know anything.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what they were always good about that. I mean, it's kind of like once you get into a program with a guy, sometimes you would, you talk about it and maybe talk about, okay, since this is what they've seen, maybe it'd be good to do this next time. But for that show, I mean, and they hit it from everybody. That was like that, there was, like they weren't going to let this get out. And they didn't let it get out. I didn't, nobody knew anything until I got to the building. So pretty wild.
Who laid it out to you, Vince?
What's that?
Who laid it out to you, Vince?
Well, yeah, Vince and Pat Patterson. Pat at that time was Vince's right-hand man. And I'm glad that was, because Pat Patterson was brilliant. I mean, not only was he a great pro wrestler himself, but in terms of his understanding and the psychology of what we do, he was great. And again, I look at Vince and say, Vince is not a great wrestling promoter. What Vince is good at is marketing his product. You know, that's
Sure.
where Vince's expertise comes in. But to really get down to the nuts and bolts of what makes a good wrestling match, that wouldn't be Vince because he never did it. But Pat did. So that was a good combination there.
You get in the back afterwards. Is it business as normal? Like, We got the job done, or is it, hey, we did something special tonight?
Well, I mean, we knew we had done something special because we knew what was coming, like, um, and so technically, um, it's kind of like, we got the twin referee comes in and counts Hogan down. Andre gets the belt, wraps it around my waist, and for like a week or so, I actually showed up in the towns wearing the belt. And then they make the big announcement that, I'm not the champion. I didn't win it. You can't buy it. But Hulk, Hulk couldn't take it back because he technically lost.
Right.
And Andre wasn't going to take it because I had paid him off. So what do you do? And so the answer was we have a tournament to declare a new champion. That was the setup for WrestleMania 4. And that's what we did. And it was great. It
When
was
you
great.
left the building that night, did you know that those were the plans?
No, no. I knew when I got there. I knew when they laid it out, what they were going to do.
Right. No, I'm
So
sorry. When you left the building in Indianapolis, did you know
yeah,
those were the you knew what WrestleMania 4 was going to be?
uh, yeah. I mean, thinking back, I'm trying to remember just when I found out. But I mean, it's kind of like, uh, and because I was one of the main guys as being the cause for having a tournament, that was the angle I was in. And again, going forward to WrestleMania 4, Andre, gets involved with me and he helps me. And unfortunately, Savage beats me and he cheated.
Man, no good
He
Hulk Hogan,
cheated.
man.
You telling me?
Who
I'm
did?
telling you, he cheated.
Who did?
You
Hulk
know,
Hogan hit you with a chair, damn it.
and uh, and so yeah, it was great.
How'd you get along with Andre?
What's that?
How'd you get along with Andre?
I loved Andre. Andre and I got along great, and Andre was a great guy, and it's hard. I don't think a lot of people appreciated, how hard life was for Andre because here's this how would it was kind of like waking up in Never Never Land and all the furniture is shrunk.
Right.
It's kind of like you get a hotel room. He doesn't fit on a regular bed, and barely fits on a king size bed. And getting in and out of the bathroom and all that stuff. It just made it difficult for him. But he managed, and he did well. Yeah, I mean, I love the guy. Uh, it's like don't ever try to drink with him. That's for sure.
What was the record? 112 beers, I think, for Andre.
I can't remember. I mean, it's kind of like you go out with Andre, and he likes to drink, and he keeps, and it's kind of like, when he would wrap his hand around a beer can, you could not see the can at all. It's how big his hand was. It's kind of like if we wrapped our hand around like a Coke miniature mini.
Right.
Well, a regular beer can was like that in Andre's hand, and just so man, it's kind of like uh, two two cases of beer wasn't necessarily a lot of beer for Andre.
Right.
Especially if he had to share some of it.
You always hear how much Andre drank. How much did he eat? You go out to dinner with Andre. What's that? What's something like that like?
Yeah, I've been out to eat with him, and so a lot of times, not that bad. I mean, he, you know, ate normal sized meals. Sometimes he'd get more. We all did, but yeah, but and here's the thing though. Yes, Andre drank a lot, and I try to make the fans understand that, you know, because of Andre's condition, uh, to some degree, he was always in pain. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He lived with pain. He dealt with pain, and he dealt with, you know, it's kind of like I said, waking up in Never Never Land and everything is shrunk. You know, I actually had, went out to his house, when he had passed away, and they did the memorial thing for him. I was there, and saw his house, and that was almost like waking up in Never Never Land too, because everything was big. It's like
Right.
all the chairs and everything had been built to fit him.
Wow.
And but Andre was he was a real good guy. I mean, and he was a pretty good judge of character. I'll put it this way: if Andre liked you, you knew it, and if Andre didn't like you, you also knew it. He would make it known, and there's a good chance that if he didn't like you, you you weren't a very likable person.
Right.
Anyway,
We recently lost Mike Jones, Virgil.
yeah,
Um, I had you sign this last time I saw you.
wow.
You want an 8x10, Ted? It's money, but the package with you and Virgil together, and I'm speaking from the seventh grade kid whose
Uh-huh.
life was pro wrestling. The Ted DiBiase Virgil package, it just worked. Like there was magic there.
Well, it's kind of like, and Virgil was a good guy. I mean, his real name was Mike, and you know, the first time I ever met him, I mean, this unbelievable body. He kept himself in such good shape and everything, but he, he really was not a good wrestler.
Right.
I mean, and he didn't do much. He stood in the corner and he looked like and looked mean and bad. And then there were times when I would have, or when he would be involved in one of my matches and stuff like that. But overall, I put it this way: if Virgil could have had the ability to be a better wrestler, oh my gosh, it was because when he finally got tired, when we finally did the deal where he just gets tired of all my shit, and whacks me with the belt. I mean, the people went crazy,
Yeah.
but we only got one match out of that. And the reason we only got one match out of that is because he just wasn't qualified to do it. If you understand what I'm saying,
Sure.
just not that good. But as a person, not that guy, not a bad guy at all. And I remember the first time I saw him where he had started to really lose weight, I was kind of shocked. And it's like because I was the name, and they didn't do anything else with him really. Um, you know, a lot of people would call me and book me, but they wouldn't, it's kind of like to them it wasn't worth it to book us both.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
For the return on their money, and I understood that too. But places that he would go that were close to Pittsburgh where he lived for the Comic Con. Anytime he was at a con and I was there, because I never knew. I mean, I even now, I mean, I was like, I'm gonna go to Philadelphia to WrestleCon, in a couple of days, and of course that's all wrestlers. But I mean, who knows who knows who's going to be there and who's not.
Right.
But back to Virgil, if he was if I went into a Comic Con and he was there, I would always okay, I said, bring your stuff over here and sit with me, and I would include him, sitting by me, and but again, even there, there would be people who turned out and would get the double picture of me and him together, picture of me and him together. but by and large, a lot of the fans just got pictures and pictures with me because he was, you know, there at the beginning. He was, he was part of the package, but it just wore off. And again, the reason it wore off is because he really didn't have the capacity to wrestle.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He just
Sure.
wasn't. It's kind of like you can teach everybody how to take a good bump or what have you, but to be a really good wrestler, you have to have the ability to think on your feet and call things on the fly. And you can't just sit down and map it out step by step by step. Uh, and 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 even if we did that, I'm not sure Virgil could have done it very well.
I
Okay.
remember as a kid. Yeah, I remember as a kid, I was at the Slammy Awards, and you were sitting there in Atlantic City. You were sitting there, and I had a book or something. I looked at you and I said, "Would you mind?" And you went, "Virgil." And Virgil stood up, walked over to me, grabbed the book, walked it back to you. You signed it, gave it to Virgil. Is that how life on the road was? Did you have him do all those little things like carry your
Well,
bags and drive?
sometimes, and again, now Vince McMahon, he's just um, he said, Ted, he says, obviously you can't live like this. It's like, when the tour was over, whatever the tour was, I mean, when I first started with WWF, as it was then, we were on 3 weeks, 21 days and 21 cities. Oh my gosh. Yeah, there were days I'd wake up in a hotel room and go, where the hell am I? Uh,
Right.
you know, uh, but we would just go, 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 go. And then we go home for a week and then we go back on the road. And that grind. And it was just, Virgil was he just didn't have the capacity to be able to be a good wrestler.
Mm.
And that's why we only got so much out of it. I know it's hard to explain it. And I'm trying to be nice because he's gone and I don't want to slight him. Was he a nice guy? Yeah, he was a nice guy, and he was just a troubled soul too, I believe. Because eventually I know his mother died, and then I remember one of the last times that I saw him. Oh my gosh, he looked horrible. I mean,
Yeah.
if you've ever seen a picture of the people uh, that came out of the concentration camps in Germany, I mean, it was like skin on bone,
Right.
and that's how he looked, and it was heartbreaking. And there just wasn't, I know there was a guy, I can't remember his name now, that was trying to help him and did help him some. And I was grateful for that. And, what I could do for him basically was what I did. It was if I showed up, if you're anywhere I am, again, Million Dollar Man's a character on TV. If the promotion, if the people running a Comic Con aren't willing to pay his airfare and hotel, then I can't do it for him.
Right.
I couldn't possibly do that for him all the time. But I said if he was close, I said then I want you there if you can be there. That's about the best I could do.
Got it. Got it. When I saw you in New Jersey last month, I said to you, I wish I saw more Ted DiBiase, Ricky Steamboat matches because I can't think of any. And you and I were talking about that for a while. What are some of your dream matches, dream programs,
Yeah.
guys you always wanted to work with? Who would that be?
Well, I mean, and that was really sad too because I'd always heard about how good Ricky was and everything. Ricky and I had one match and we blew the top off of the roof, man. And I remember saying to him when we got back in the back, I said, man, we could have had a program. If we could have had a run, oh my gosh, it would have been great. So yeah, he's one of those guys that like he would definitely be in my top 10 for sure. Um, you know, um, I don't know. I couldn't name like a top 10, like off the top of my head. I would, I would have to think about that. I mean, it's kind of like, people, but again, people that there were different people who drew money because they had. It's kind of like Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan was not a great wrestler per se, but Hulk Hogan knew who his character was
Right.
and did it flawlessly. And that's why he was over. And again, and this is at a time when Vince was trying to market wrestling to a younger audience. And he was smart because video games, action figures, and all of those things are going to start coming into play. And here's your bigger than life superhero, Hulk Hogan, and again, and then I tried to be the exact opposite of that, kind of like Snidely Whiplash, like yeah, tired of the train tracks.
There we
Yeah.
go.
Oh yeah, and I can't tell you. I mean, I did so many things in my career, and brother, I'm gonna tell you what. If I've heard this one, I mean, it's like every time I go anywhere, Ted, can we hear the laugh? Just one time. I mean, so many guys are thought of that they're remembered. Oh, well, this guy was remembered for this move, or this guy was
Right.
remembered for this move, and like, what about DiBiase? Remember for the sneaking laugh.
That's great.
Hey, but you know what? I made a lot of money with it.
How'd you like working with Randy Savage?
Oh gosh, Randy was great. I mean, and the first time Randy and I ever stepped in the ring together was at WrestleMania IV in the main event.
Wow.
We had never touched before, and well, I don't know. You can go back and look at it, but I think we blew it out. We had a great match. And then after that one, that's where he won the title, and then fast forward. We wrestled each other, in cities all over the country, off of that. So, but yeah, I had world of respect for Randy. And Randy, like myself, came from a wrestling family.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and yeah, and Randy was also notoriously frugal, I guess would be the word.
He's cheap. Come on, Ted,
Cheap.
say it. He was cheap.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, but God bless him. I mean, and I would rather be that than the other way. Like,
Right.
just throwing your money out there and
Sure.
care what you spend. It was
Wait,
good.
did you just say you don't like people who throw their money around, Ted? Come on. You're the $1 million man.
Yeah, well, yeah, that wasn't my money. Oh, and
Yeah.
here's a funny story. Uh, oh gosh, I'm trying to think who it was. Oh, there were a couple of guys, but the one guy in particular that this happened with me. Like after the show, the guy, we'd always go back to the hotel, and get something to eat and go in and have a few beers and ever. And then, and so, I'm trying to think who it was that came in and always wanted to, uh, he was like, around around for the house on, and who, golly, oh man, I want to say it wasn't Andre. I can't, I'll think of it, here's the punchline. Whoever that person was, and he was, he was a guy that, he was one of the guys, and he loved to do it. And I went up and I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, I do that too. I said, but here's the big difference. You're spending your money. I'm spending Vince's money. Because that's one of the things Vince told me to do. He said, go
Yeah.
in and announce yourself, tell everybody in like a fancy restaurant that, you're picking up the tab, and have Virgil with you, and they go around and pick up everybody's check. And slap the $100 bills down, get the receipt, bring it back to us, and we'll replenish the money. And all that money I spent, Vince wrote off as marketing.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
he's
genius.
marketing. He's marketing his town. He's marketing
Yeah.
me. Yeah, and so yeah, there's a
Was there a,
couple.
was there a limit? Did he say to you,
Well, he all he said was, "Now, let me caution you: if you abuse it, you will lose
"You'll
it."
lose it"? Got
And he
it.
said, "So pick your spots." And I said, "Okay, I understand." And I never abused it. And I'm still trying to think who it was that. It's just, yeah, I'll think of it some sooner or later.
Getting back to Randy Savage, how is it working out matches with him? He's rumored to like want to talk a lot about it, and I'm sure you're old school. You like to go in there and just work the match.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, Randy was easy to work with, and Randy was easy to work with because, like me, he grew up in the business,
Mhm.
and like me, his father was a wrestler, and uh, and I think that was one of the things that we had going for us. And I'm trying to think, when we were going over the finish for the WrestleMania IV match, and and Pat Patterson kind of laid out the finish and what have you and everything, and how it would go, and boom, and I would do miss the big thing, and he covers me, and 1, 2, 3, and I said, yeah, that sounds good, and Randy's like, and Elizabeth looked at him and said, Randy, you can do that. He says, yeah, okay, I can do that. Now, I don't, I'm sure that Randy didn't depend on Elizabeth's, you know, advice on all of his finishes or anything like that, but it was just funny for that one.
That's awesome. I can't. Oh, we're winding down on time, man. This is great. One last thing I want to ask you: JYD in Mid South, Hulk Hogan WWE. Who is more over?
Wow. It's like, it's almost an equal thing because JYD, and again, there's a lot of guys that didn't like Bill Watts and the way he promoted, but let me tell you something. Bill Watts is brilliant. He knows his wrestling. And I mean, I don't know one wrestler that couldn't squabble about payoffs at sometimes, like, or think they deserved more or what have you. But what Cowboy Bill Watts did is he was the first promoter to feature as one of his top stars a black guy.
Right.
Nobody else had ever done it, and he couldn't have done it in a better place. Louisiana and Mississippi, Arkansas, not Oklahoma, but yeah, and the thing, JYD, okay, and I tell people this all the time. I said the one thing that you can't teach anybody is charisma. You either have it or you don't.
Right.
And if you do have it, then you could probably build on it a little bit. But if you don't have it, I mean, you could go out and have a match and do everything right. But if you don't have any charisma, if and it's kind of like, it's just like, okay, they had a match, so what? But when JYD would come out there and stroll out to the ring, and he'd grab the rope and wiggle his knees a little bit, howl like a moon, howl at the moon like a dog, and get in the ring. I mean, he had it. You put him on a microphone, he was unbelievable on a microphone. And that's the other thing is wrestling's not all the wrestling. It's like there's I've seen a lot of guys that were really good in the ring, but you give them a microphone and and that's where a lot of times a manager comes in. A
Right.
lot of times a promoter will take a manager, somebody who can really talk, and give that manager to a wrestler who needs the help. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And so, but Randy didn't need that kind of help, but JYD, oh my gosh. I remember he said he was having this is, and he and I were, he was my best friend. He was the best man at my wedding. And we traveled together all the time. And then I turned the bad guy, on
Right.
him. Oh my
Right.
gosh. And I mean, this is back when heat was heat, and a lot of people believed it. And so
Right.
I told Grizzly Smith was uh, Bill Watts's like agent. He was the guy that showed up at all the towns, told everybody what they were doing that night, and if they needed a draw on their money, he'd give it to them and let you know what you were doing. And so this was in New Orleans. Well, I told well I here's what I told uh, Grizzly. I said, I am not driving my car to New Orleans the first time I wrestle dog. And he said, why? I said, because it'll be on blocks when I come out. I mean, they took they're wrestling real serious down there.
Right.
So anyway, he says, okay. He says, just ride with me. He says, I'm neutral. So I rode with him, and so JYD and I go out there, and we have this great match, and obviously I take over on him, and I'm punishing him, you know, just beating him down, whatever, and finally he makes the big comeback, and he wins. Everybody's happy, and so I go back and I'm showering. I come out of the shower. I'm starting to get dressed, and old Grizz comes walking to the door. He's got both his hands on his hips, and he said, just looking at me, shaking his head. I said, what's wrong, Grizz? Just shaking his head. Something wrong with the match? He said, no, the match was great. I said, so what's wrong? He said, they slipped my tires, all of them. They slipped all of his tires. I mean, that's how serious the
Wow.
fans took it. Just because I rode with him, they slid his
Wow.
tires. And I said, if it had been my car, which was a Smokey and the Bandit Trans Am, I said, I wouldn't have had any tires.
Wow.
But it was, but yeah, I had a great time working with the dog, and they just and he, you talk about somebody good on the mic. I remember he said one time, he says, DiBiase, you can't come like a cabbage, all head, no rear. You got to bring some to get some.
That's great.
Well,
How is it like with Hulk Hogan though? What level of over was he when you were in
Hulk
there?
was good. I mean, the first I met Hulk Hogan the night he made his first appearance in Madison Square Garden. This was when he just started. It was, and this was my first trip to New York, which I wasn't one of the big stars, but I was the guy he worked with. His first match in Madison Square Garden was with me.
Right.
And I remember Vince Sr. was still alive, and he says, we're really trying to get this guy over. And that was going to be my last match in the New York territory, and I was leaving. And so I went out there and I put him over like you know, I made him a star. And so when I got back, Hulk thanked me. I mean, he says, I man, I can't thank you enough. And he says, I owe you one, buddy. I owe you one. And Vince Senior again. And I said, thank you very much, and I'll be happy to come back again sometime. And then fast forward to and I can't remember what the year was. But I think 87 is when I went back.
Hmm.
Was it 87 when I went
Yep.
back?
Yep.
Went back to New York, started as the Million Dollar Man thing.
Correct.
And I remember the first night I saw Hulkster. I mean, I had been there like for a few shows and whatever, even he just didn't happen to be on those shows. And he came up and he said, shook my hand and smiled and said, and winked at me. And he said, it's payback time.
Oh wow.
Yeah. He didn't forget. And of course, we had some great matches and what have you. And I made a lot of money with him too. So, uh, you reap what you sow.
That's awesome. Ted, I
Sometimes,
can't thank you enough. Yeah.
but but yeah, yeah, and I loved working with him. He wasn't. Uh, everybody's got people they like and they don't like and what have you. Uh, there really wasn't anybody. I can't think of any one person that I just didn't like or just well. I guess the one that comes to mind that, and it's because of an attitude I saw. See, I'm a guy who grew up in wrestling.
Right.
My father wrestled. Wrestling has been in my family all my life. But when Jim Hellwig came in as the Warrior, um, now I can understand being ambitious and wanting to, but it seemed to me that he had no time for anybody. In other words, it's kind of like, you're going to get in the ring with me, and I'm going to do my best to make you look good, and you can acknowledge me. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like,
Right.
um, I don't, if you talk with a dozen guys, 11 of them are going to agree with me. He just wasn't, I don't know. And I don't know what it was. I mean, I admired him because it takes a great deal of discipline to keep your body looking like that all the time.
Of
You got
course.
to be really strict and in the gym and on top of it, but if what I was wanting and what everybody else was wanting was spend as much time learning how to wrestle as it is to, because if you ever hear his interviews,
Sure did.
he'd talk for 2 minutes and I'd look at somebody and go, what the hell did he just say?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So you'd
Anyway,
go out. So Ted, you'd go out there with him. You'd bump all over the ring for him. You get in the back, and he wasn't appreciative.
not
Uh-huh.
much. No. And there's a lot of guys who feel like I do, you know, and sorry that, I mean, God, God bless him. I don't wish anybody to die. And he obviously died way too young. And but I will give him credit where credit's due. He worked at, and he worked very hard at maintaining his appearance. Okay. But that's not all there was to it. And I hope that he didn't think that that's all he had to do,
Right.
because I don't know. It's just wasn't a very likable person in my, and I asked 11 other wrestlers. I think 10 of them will tell you the same thing.
Right.
And you're shaking your head like you've heard it before.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's a shame, especially because your specialty was going in there against less talented wrestlers. You
Yeah,
wouldn't wrestle down to their level. You would bring them up to your
yeah,
level.
yeah, exactly. So, and that's largely due because I grew up in the business, and wrestling is not like, you don't just we're going to do this and then we're going to do this and then we're going to do this. I've seen guys do that. You might do something in a match one night and you get a really big response from the crowd. Wow, okay. And you might do the same thing the next night in front of another crowd, and you don't get the same response, or you get less response. And what you have to do as a worker, a wrestler, is you've got to be able to adapt. And I'm going to try to think. I think like Pittsburgh for me was always a hard town. It was kind of like, the Steelers. Yeah, well, they were. I'm telling you, they were hardcore, all right. I mean, it was kind of like I'd go out there and do stuff, and sometimes I go, what do I have to do to make these people get mad at
Right.
me? Slit somebody's throat. But anyway, and every crowd was different, so yeah, those are things that you learn as you grow in the business. So there you have it.
Awesome.
And then as people say, well, what are you doing now, Ted? I said, well, I'm still wrestling. They said, you are? I said, yeah. I said, I have a different opponent. I said, but I've got the greatest tag team partner in the universe. I said, I'm an ordained minister, and my partner's name is Jesus Christ, and my enemy is the devil. And so I'm doing everything I can on a daily basis to take him out. So can you imagine that? The $1 million man, a
No.
minister, the $1 million minister.
Hey, everybody's got to pray, right? There you go. I just gave you a new line,
There
Ted.
you go. Yeah, I got a new
Look
life.
at
He's got to pray. I love it.
that. Good,
That's awesome, man.
good.
That's
Uh,
awesome. But look,
Ted,
wrestling has been the joy of my life. Like I said, there were some that you like guys, and there's guys you don't like. Jim Hellweg was the one guy that always just kind of ruffled my feathers the wrong way. But again, I'm not totally knocking him. I just, he was just different in a lot of ways. And um, another guy that's a very good friend of mine that the first time that Hellwig showed up, he was with Steve Borden. Steve
sure,
Borden is Sting.
sure.
And since Sting told me some things about Hellwig that helped me understand the guy a little bit better. So yeah. But hey, I love wrestling. People say, if you could do it all over again, would you still do it? I said, absolutely. I said, a lot of people go to work every day because they have to,
Right.
and they might not necessarily hate it, but it's not like, oh boy, this is going to be a blast. But I'm a guy who went to work every day and absolutely loved what I did. And again, some of those days were kind of rough, because especially when the long, hard the travel days and things like that. And yes, wrestling is showbiz, but you still get hurt, and you got to work through the pain. There's times when you be. I mean, I can remember having a match, and I was so sick. But I mean, if you're on the marquee and people paid their money, you got to go. And I would roll out of the ring, and I would roll under the ring and throw
Oh
up
wow,
where nobody could see it. And then I'd roll back out, get back in the ring. Ugh.
wow,
Well,
that's crazy.
everything's got a price.
And everybody's got to pray.
There you go, boss. That's
Awesome.
awesome.